Pam and I thought that it might be a good idea to recapitulate some of the things we said this morning about the nature of this project and our intent. Pamela and I had I have to say, extraordinary good fortune to not only meet, but study with a master of dancing. And for several years, and to Mary Anthony profoundly shaped us as dancers, as artists, and as individuals. And now, 5 years after Mary's death, we have intended this project as a way of, first of all, of recording our own recollections of the things that we learned from Mary, and second, of preserving some of her ideas and some of her concepts about teaching, as she expressed them during the last great flowering of her exceptionally long and brilliant life as a teacher and as a dancer. Because Mary taught and influenced so many different people, and because her ideas and her concepts of teaching and of dancing were constantly in a process of evolution, inevitably what we have recorded is going to be different from other people's recollections of what we have done, of what they did, and to be frank, all of our, we've hoped to even record even the fumblings of our memory, to be able to show how we are reaching for what Mary gave us. We hope that this project, far from being a definitive record of any part of Mary Anthony's teaching, will serve as a starting point for other people's recollections, who will look at this and say, oh no, we didn't do it that way, we did it this way, or the counts are different on that. To rediscover and to recreate their own recollections of what Mary taught them, and so to enlarge the canon of what we know and what we preserved of this extraordinary individual. So, above all, we wish to say thank you, Mary Anthony. So, what we'd like to do for the rest of this afternoon is to talk about some of the details of the things that we have shown in the exercises and in the classroom combinations, to bring out some of the things that Mary always stressed in her teaching and we think are part of the core concepts of what Mary Anthony technique is about. So I think that the appropriate places to start is with the floor exercises, and with the things that Mary achieved with the warm-up exercises of the class, which are often just regarded as something we got through in order to get warmed up for the class to begin. Yeah, Mary was a very, I want to say, clever and crafty teacher, and she knew all sorts of different things that had to happen in order to run a proper dance class. One was to collect everybody in one place, to get them to work together, to get them to breathe together, to get them to organize so that she could actually begin to teach them. So that the opening exercises, the exercises on the floor, which we always saw as conditioning exercises, were her way of collecting all of her students. She had a chance to absorb latecomers and integrate them into the class without disrupting the class, because people would come in, take a mat, put themselves back in the center whenever it is that they arrived. And at the same time, she would be teaching us to breathe together, to count together, to move together, and to learn concepts that we had to have pounded into us, which is the idea of, counting in units of 4, in units of 3, and in breathing and in integrating all those things going on. So that not only was she shaping us physically with the exercises that she was doing, but she was preparing us mentally for the class and for the things that would follow. So that by the time we finished the exercises and turned on the lights, that we were all on the same page. And therefore she didn't have to do an awful lot of throat clearing and attention gathering to get her class together. That said, there were enormous things that had to be accomplished in order to train dancers. And the things that I would like to emphasize that I thought were critical to this teaching is the role of the center and the role of the rotators. It actually starts at the very beginning of the class, when you are lying on your back, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about anything in particular, or getting rid of all the stuff that you had in your head, is the idea of activating the rotators, which is the muscles that are that are just under the buttocks muscle at the top of the leg, so that your muscles connect in, pulling in with the abdomen, pulling in with the chest, and letting the air soften in the chest, and then releasing, so that you activated the rotators, pull in with the abdomen, cinch the waist, let the chest soften as you breathe out, and then you breathe in. Rotators, abdomen, pull in, soften, and breathe in. Rotators, abdomen, pull in, and breathe in. And that is the concept of the modern dance contraction, as Mary Anthony taught it, is that it's not shortening, it's not clenching, it's not anything other than the idea of engaging the whole center of the body in that extraordinary pulling into the center and then letting it out so that it happens. Mary always said the modern dance contraction is a state of breathing when all the air is pressed out. So it is breathing out, 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 breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, 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 and breathe in, breathe in, breathe in. And you can see this it is developed in an increasingly active way throughout all of the exercises, so that when you're standing up or you're sitting up, holding onto your knees, once again, you would activate the rotators, pull into the abdomen, feel the pelvis tilt, feel yourself being pulled by this force towards the rear, and that would round your back. You connect the rotators, use it to bring up without losing that, and then gradually release it to the ceiling. So tighten the rotators, pull into the abdomen, feel the pelvis tilt, feel the lower back round. Use your rotators to come up with the abdomen, bring the pelvis forward, and release. So breathe out, breathe out, breathe out. And if you really physically, if I let go, I would have gone to back, would have gone to the mat. Come up, come up, come up, and release. Breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, come up, and then release. So that everything happens, the movement begins with what's going on in the center of the body. It doesn't start from the periphery, it doesn't start from the feet, it doesn't start from anything else. Is that everything starts from the center. And one of the great clues to understanding Mary Anthony's movement for me always was to look at what the body does. Because the body is the clue to what goes on in the movement. So it makes all the other movements happen. And occasionally Mary would throw a clinker a wild card into the deck, and she'd isolate a movement. So it would occur, because she thought surprise was a wonderful element in art. But it was a way of organizing the movement so that it had a physical logic in the body. So if I'm on the floor, my arm's in a T, my right leg is up, and you have to imagine that the leg is straight, it's directly over the pelvis, and it's very, very parallel. And what this works on is the muscles, again, that Mary called that were called the rotator muscles, which Mary said were a set of 3 muscles that were right at the top of the leg, just were tucked just under your rear end, and were involved in, seemed very small, very obscure, but were were invaluable in controlling, in connecting your legs to your center, so that you start out very parallel. So the leg would be very parallel, and as it moved down here, it'd be parallel, that it would begin to turn out, and turn out, and turn out as you come center, and then rotate parallel. So parallel, turned out, rotate, parallel, turned out, rotate, parallel, turned out, now go the other way, turned out, parallel, rotate, turned out, parallel, come up parallel, rotate, turned out, parallel, turned out, parallel, come up parallel, and then it would change to the other side. So that was that idea of moving from a parallel leg to a turned out leg, always using the rotators. And modern dance, of course, made use of both parallel movement and of the parallel legs and turned out legs. But the ultimate concept was always to get the rotators engaged in actively contributing to what the posture, to the position of the legs, and to always be connecting, the bottom with the top. Otherwise, you were a stack of plates balanced on top of a tea tray, and as the tea tray moved, well, sometimes the plates moved by themselves, sometimes they moved with the tray, but the idea is to clamp them to the bottom so that everything happened all as one unit. The body turned the legs turned the body. And that was something that was very, very critical to all of Mary's teaching, and I would see that happen continually. And it was something that when people came into the studio, even people who were accomplished dancers, Mary would sometimes look at them and say, I don't see the rotators. I want to connect, I want the rotators to connect to connect your legs to the top of your legs, to the center of your body. It's another way of getting what's happening on the periphery, the legs and the arms, to connect to what's going on in the center. So similarly, we'll see an emphasis on keeping the arms on the back, so that Mary would always tell us to think about to feel those 2 flat surfaces of the shoulder blades, and to feel them connecting, so that you lift them up, bring them down, drop them down on the back, so that they reflected what was going on in the back. And you no longer held your arms, with the muscles of your arms, as you connected them to the shoulder blades, so that you would pull up in front, pull down and back, connect the arms to the back, so that everything was, you no longer had to hold the weight of the arms. The arms were being held by the body, so that I could stand here, as people do in Bayadere and other, all sorts of other exercises, and hold my arms like this without completely exhausting the muscles in my arms, because my back and my center was something that was making it happen. And it also made it possible for us to turn, for us to move, to have the arms reflecting what the back was doing, instead of flopping around independently. And it's not to say that that isn't a legitimate way of moving. It is a way of and there are very important things that happen when the arms are disconnected from the back, but it is a way of centralizing the movement and making it reflect what's going on in the body. So as dancers, we learn to do both. But it is a lot easier for us to just feel about isolating the arm, because it's just one part of the body, instead of feeling that the arm moves because the back moves and because the body moves. So those were two central things, a number of central things that happened in the course of the first 20 minutes of class that were central to Mary's teaching. And Mary would begin her fundamentals classes, her beginners classes, and intermediate classes with some version of those Pilates exercises, Pilates-based exercises. As an example of what would be what I'd have to call a controlled isolation, because Mary was very, very, very fond of what happened when you swung, when you swung the swings of the Le Bon swings, her oceanic swings, is that idea of letting something, of driving movement out of that particular type of energy. And because, she was a student of the great German dancer and choreographer Hanya Holm, who was herself a student of the great German choreographer Mary Wigman. They were very, very, very interested in the idea of swings and how swinging movement would help. Also because we worked we had a very cold, old-fashioned Greenwich Village studio that was in a commercial building where the landlord would turn the heat off at the end of the day. And on the weekends, we had to do lots and lots of swinging movements to warm us up. And so we learned an enormous number of different types of movements that were all based on trying to, swings move the body, they drive the blood into the extremities, and they will warm us up, and also teach us an awful lot about movement. This is a movement that she would do that you would not often see in the more advanced classes, but would be in her very beginning classes, the fundamentals classes. So you'd swing over and up, contract and release. Over and up, contract and release, and go over and up, contract and release. Over and up, contract. Now with bent knees, go over and up, bent knees and straight knees, and over and up, bent and straight, over and up, bent and straight, over and up, bent and straight. Now, all sorts of things are happening in what seems to be an extremely simple exercise. One is that you are going over your contractions so that your stomach doesn't pooch out as you go over, so that you're stretching your lower back because you're putting weight against the contraction. And it gives you a chance to stretch the back muscles out and up so that it's there when you need it, and then contract. Rotators, abdomen, pull in, and release. Now, the natural thing for the body to do when you pull in is to go like this. And the intent of this exercise is to always stay on top of your sitting bones and not roll back onto your pelvis. Over and up, think high, contract. So that I'm not going back, which would be giving into that impulse. I'm using it to lift me up so that you feel like there's a little hurricane going on in the center of your body that is pulling you in and lifting you up and then straightening and releasing it. So it is the other thing that happens, of course, because there's something going on in the feet, over and up, flexed feet, so that you're stretching all the way through the back of the leg into the heel, and lengthening, something that we all desperately need to be able to lengthen because we spend too much time sitting, and then straightening, over and up, lengthen and straighten. Finally, not finally, but thirdly or fourthly, what you're doing is over and up, using it to bend the knees and straighten the knees. So it is like coiling a spring or like compressing a spring, over and up, spring, compress it, shoot it out. Over and up, compress and shoot it out. Over and up, compress and shoot it out. So that all these things are going on in one simple exercise that can be done in 30 seconds. And it's an intrinsic part of working as a dancer and in doing exercises in that is that so many things are going on in one particular movement. But with Mary, it was always something that she would set up with an intent to teach and an intent to internalize something. The other thing, the final thing that happened in this movement, which is also very important, it's the feeling of using breath. So that it would be breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. And we used to teach this by telling people, Mary's image was this is if you've ever been to a zoo and watched a lion roar. The whole thing that goes on about this. So we would have people, I would ask people to imagine that they were Bruce Lee in one of those kung fu movies. So over and up, ha! Over and up, ha! Breathe out, breathe in, so that you had to make a noise so that you didn't hold your breath. So that you learn to make that movement as a part of, to breathe out as a way of releasing all of the energy that's in your body, and breathing in as a method of restoring it. Over and up, ha! And over and up, ha! And up. All in one exercise. All in one exercise. And that was the one of the key things to all of the floor work, to all of the things with that, is that she didn't emphasize that quite so much in her teaching in her more advanced classes, because you were supposed to expect it to know that by that particular point. But it is all seated inside of the exercises that occur in the first part of that class. And Mary was a skilled enough teacher and a conscious enough teacher that didn't happen by accident. It happened because she intended it to be what she wanted it to be. So from there, you would be rolling over to your back and doing our old friend, the rounding and the straightening of the back. So now that we've talked about the rotators, you'd be round the back, connect the rotators, release the rotators and straighten the back. Round the lower back, only the pelvis, connect the rotators to the pelvis, release the rotators and straighten the back. Round the pelvis, connect the rotators, release the rotators and straighten the back. Round the pelvis, connect the rotators, release the rotators, straighten the back, and you tuck your toes under, straight behind you. Get that stretch in the back of the leg once again, all the way through to the stretch to the flexed foot. Dip in between your arms. Stretch the right leg behind you so that you got the stretch through that. So that you stretch the back of the knee, and I'm not going to do this very gracefully. Just come up, in first position, and drop your tailbone down, rotate, cinch, and lift. And at that point, you have succeeded in getting off the floor. But all those things are happening, as a part of what you're doing. Words were ultimately very important to explaining and to amplifying concepts that she wanted people to understand. Is that it was always see first, see and copy, see and copy, see and copy. But because we are so, it is so easy to copy the externals of movement, is that you did have to explain sometimes what was happening internally, and with, greatly, wonderfully, gifted, intuitive dancers, they would grasp very quickly what was going on. The rest of us, the ordinary mortals, would always benefited from having a little time to think about and to actually articulate the things that went on in dancing. So that, first of all, is that even getting off the floor at the very end of this is that a very important part of drop the pelvis. Activate the rotators, pull into the center, lift the chest, so that we were all very, 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 very placed. So shoulders were directly over hips were over balls of the feet. Your rotators were connected so that they were there to help you when you needed them, and that your weight was just slightly forward, so that you had So that if you're going to fall in one direction, you would fall on your nose rather than on your back. So that your feet were pressed against the floor. So all of the pliés would be, we would do a plié sequence that would begin with 4 threes. Activate the rotors, pull in with the abdomen, cinch the waist, and lift the chest. And now, so Pam, come in. Want to see your knees touching, if you can. There we go. Get the inner thighs touching. There we are. So Mary always said, I don't want to see any space in between your legs. So that you had to envision, activate the rotors, pull in with the abdomen, cinch the waist, lift the chest. Now open the knees first. So keeping those inner thighs together, try to open the first, open the knees, and then the thighs. Close the thighs first, and then the knees. More. Open, and close, and close, and close. So you had to feel this fighting, the resistance of the inner thigh. Open the knees. There, good. And then the thighs. Close the thighs, and then the knees. Open the knees. Then the thighs. Close the thighs, and close the knees. Yeah, that's it. That's it. And that works on the rotators. That works on the inner thigh. It means that you don't just bend. Let's give the legs a break for a second, and think about what happens in the Laban swings. And the biggest emphasis was in trying to get swing 1 and swing 2 in order, because that's the ones that we use the most, which is this swing here, and this swing here, so that we would take this apart by just doing it in the body. Body forward, body right, body back, body left, body back, body right, body forward, body left, body forward, body right, body back, body left, body forward, or the body back to the right. And so that you felt that it was happening as a result of something that was going on in the body. So if you bring the arm out, body forward, body left, body right, body back, body left, body back, body right, body left, body forward, body right. And so forward and back, forward, right, back, left, forward, right, and forward, right, back, left, and back, left, forward, and right. That's good. That's good. So, Pam, if you do this without even moving your arm, with barely moving your arm, is that it happens because the body makes it happen. All the arm does is respond to what the body is doing. That makes it a deeper experience, and something that's more truthful than just doing this. Which we could do, which we often did, for expediency's sake, or just to be able to survive the overall movement, is to do that, so that is that we would sometimes teach that with just moving across the floor. So you got a chance to add that additional distraction. So do it if you can, moving across the floor, just once this side, going in this direction, so body forward as you step. 1, 2, 3, 4, body back, body right, body forward, body left, forward, left, back, right, body back, body left, forward. Good. To balance you, can we do it from the other side? And body forward, left, back, right, body back, body right, body forward, body left. Good. 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, very good. There were a couple things that, of course, that we were always working on. One was gaze, that was being able to say, you're not alone on the floor. You are looking for opportunities to relate to one another and to express your connection with one another, so that a lot of movements had hidden traps inside. There were hidden opportunities. I wouldn't even say traps, but they were opportunities for people to look at each other and to look around each other and to get out of themselves and to get out of the overall movement, so that Mary would seed movements with opportunities to see one another. Dance and movement is a form of expression. It is a form of communication. And Mary chose to call her company the Mary Anthony Dance Theater. And it was a very conscious choice, because she felt that that movement did not have to have, there was not an explicit script, but it was a form of communication. You know, whenever you put one person on stage, it is about, whether you like it or not, whether you want it to be or not, it is about a person that is out in the universe. When you put two people on the stage, there is a relationship, whether you express it or not, and you choose to activate it or not. When you have three people on the stage, you have a community that is always communicating, is always relating to one another. So in Mary's teaching, one of the nuggets and the things that she did to create this perception, to activate this perception in people, was to create opportunities, in all the movements for us to see one another. And you saw that in the off-center extensions, when we turned and faced our partner and walked in contact with one another, and then came back to the center. So, it's very easy for dancers to take an individual class. It's about you in the mirror and your battle with the teacher, to try and understand your effort to understand what the teacher is trying to give you. Mary's classes were about operating within a community. So when we would move across the floor, we always worked in partners with couples, so we were always dancing together with one another. You would look at your partner and say, are you there? Are you with me? Are we going to be friends? And always look, and then face out, so that we can establish that connection, and that we moved onwards for that. And that throughout the movements that we would do, we would look for the opportunities to look to one another and to see to one another, connect to one another. And it was a very, very, important part of the things that Mary was teaching. And she always said that she had, as she was growing up and deciding as a young woman what she wanted to do, is she was torn between being an actress and being a dancer, because she loved to move, but she also loved the sense of the communication and the sense of theater. So as a dancer and as a teacher, Mary often based works of her dance works on interpretations of things that she read in literature. She did a dance that was based on the character of Lady Macbeth. She did, one of her masterpieces called Threnody was on the play by William Synge called Riders to the Sea. Another great masterpiece of hers called Songs was based on her reading of a Blake poem, of the Blake's poems of innocence and of experience. That she would constantly tell us, read this, do this, see this. Another dance about Mary Magdalene was inspired by a painting by Georges Latour that she saw in the Metropolitan Museum. So as a part of studying with Mary Anthony, you were automatically dispatched to go to one museum a week. Go, see it. Often the assignment was go, look, make a drawing of what you saw, and bring it back and show it to me. So that I knew that you actually looked at something long enough to make a drawing of that. We would be assigned to turn the classical music station on every morning so that we heard music and we had an opportunity to hear something. One of my chores, my responsibilities as Mary's teaching assistant, was that I took everything in my record collection and recorded it onto cassette tape, so that we had tapes in the studio that dancers could take and listen to, and use in choreography. So that she always said that you want to set it to something that's worth the effort to set it to. So that she tried to avoid having people would come in and they'd set it to something that made them move, which is often something that we're listening to that was in pop music. And she said, well, why don't you set this to this particular piece by Bach, or something by Chopin, or by something? Is that because 2 years from now, everyone's first of all, the people will have moved on from that song. Second is that the song will tell people what to think about your dance. If you want your dance to tell people what to think about the music, choose a better frame for it. Put it against something that will last, that you can view, and that you can use 5 years from now, 10 years from now, without feeling that you've automatically consigned yourself to some dismal period in 1995 when you listen to this particular type of music. And Mary believed very strongly that art is a way of giving meaning to the world and giving meaning to experience. And that she did believe that there is structure inside of our life and structure inside of our existence. We are organized with a human structure. We don't have a random number of eyes. We don't have a random number of arms. We have a body that is organized, that is symmetrical, that is coherent and individual, so that there is structure inherent in the design of the universe. There is structure inherent in the design and in the creation of art. It's that we can depart from that. And the departures are the things that are exciting, because they escape into the realm of human experience. But they are things that come out of that solid structure. The reason that you're able to move like it is that you move is because you have a trained, organized, structured body, because you had your breakfast this morning, because you had your lunch, because you ate properly, because you prepared yourself for the overall movement. And so in her teaching, Mary was not only teaching us how to dance, but she was teaching us how to live. And that is why so many of us found our centers by studying, with this person, because we were living in a very scattered city, in a very scattered era, in a very scattered time, in a country where everything was going, attention was going all these different places. Mary pulled us in and said, think, concentrate, focus, discover what's important. Not what's important to me, but what's important to you. Look inside yourself, think about yourself, express what is inside you. And if you don't say it, no one's ever going to be able to find it. And that was a part, an important part of her teaching. One thing that we did not do in these exercises here, because it's difficult to show, but is the idea of taking movement and then finding your own movement to build on top of that. And it was not something that was taught in the intermediate and in the advanced classes, which is the classes that we've been focusing on here, because we wanted to talk about the technical aspects of her teaching. But particularly in her lowest level class, which was the fundamentals class, and believe me, I took the fundamentals class either took it or taught it for 35 years, and always learned from it. But that her class, that class would include, movement across the floor, a structured theme in which we move, and a moment of and then an opportunity to add on to that to find our own movement. So you would have something that might be about expressing springtime. Thinking about the painting by Botticelli called La Primavera, where you saw Flora, the goddess of spring, of flowers, and of moving across the floor and opening her basket and distributing flowers, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4. But then taking the image of, the goddesses that are in Botticelli's painting, who are dancing in a circle and represent the 3 graces, is the movement of, the graces represent the gifts that are given to mankind, that are so clearly evident in springtime. Is, it doesn't have to be beautiful, and yet it is. And so you had 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, a gift, 1, 2, 3, to each other, so that you would have a chance to express that kind of movement as a way of adding on in a structured way to finding your own movement and to creating that. And that was something Mary wanted from all of her students, is to find their own voice and their own creativity. It's why we all have inside us, in so many different versions of the same movement, is that we were encouraged to find our own interpretation of it, the way our own body wanted to speak, the way that our own method of expressing what was inside us. In her simpler classes, in the fundamentals class, which was, in a way, was the class that she probably had, she had a pleasure in teaching that was different from teaching everybody else. The intermediate and the advanced classes were all about, the dancers that she loved, and seeing them develop and prosper and flower. The fundamentals class was about exploring creativity in movement, so that we would typically organize a unit of movement around a month, so that people who were coming in would have a chance to learn the movement, to begin to be introduced to the movement in the first week, and would begin to develop it in the second and the third week. And in the fourth week, she always called graduation week, and she would expect you to perform it and to begin to express all was in it. There would be no new things, but she'd run through all the variations of the things that she did. You would often be required to go to the museum to look at pictures, so that you could begin to pick up the style. Something that was very near and very dear to Mary's heart was the different styles of movement and the what she called the pre-classic dance forms. And these are the forms of dance that occurred before dance began to develop into an expressive and a movement art, be recognized as a formal art. And so that she would ask us to, sometimes she would create something around a pavane or around the movement of a saraband. She would also do it in coming up with themes. She was very fond of the primitive movement in particular. She said that took us back to the first arts and to the time when the world was, was illuminated by starlight and by firelight, and it was filled with magic, and that a lot of her ideas about movement came from studying the primitive art particularly in the Rockefeller collection of the Metropolitan Museum, so that you see all the wonderful ideas about and primitive is not really the word that we've learned to use now. We call it the first arts. Is that the first artists understood about symmetry and about lack of symmetry, and about the ideas about relating about the movement, about the shapes, expressing that art had a form of magic inside it that would express something, so that we would often have units that involved us doing some movement that would be inspired by an African statue, and then would involve adding on, make the shape of a mask, make another mask, make another mask, make another mask. Now the requirement for that would be, is it would have to be, number one, primitive style, and number two, is it would have to be symmetrical, because that expressed something, that was going to express something about the movement. So you couldn't do this. But she would often ask us to take a symmetrical movement, make it asymmetrical. And then to take the movement and change one part, change another part, change another part, change another part, was all part of discovering all the different shapes that were in your body. Get to that, see all the different shapes that you could make with your hand. This. Thank your hand, for all the things that you could do. So that was part of the of her overall teaching, was that is to, let's take a theme from art, a theme from a painting, or a theme from a drawing, or a theme from poetry, from literature, even from music, and let's see what we can do to develop it and to express it. So that we had, you saw that in Silent Snow, Secret Snow. The idea of feeling snowfall in your head, expressing and finding and losing yourself in the majesty and the magic of snow. So that lift back. That's where you came from. And look down at the way the world has changed, has transformed by the snow. Feel the wind of the snow. Lift, open, say goodbye. That's where I'm going. Sorry, I'm leaving you. Over, and then I'm up, and I'm lost in the snowfall. And all of those things make it a richer experience for the performer, and it makes a richer experience for the audience. And the dance becomes, it's not a method of explaining, of showing to you how clever I am physically. I can impress you for about 5 seconds, and then you start seeing all the goobers that are involved in everything that I do, particularly now. But if I communicate to you and talk to you, we're beginning to open a conversation between the performer and the audience, between the artist and the receiver, that goes beyond that. It makes me more expressive as a performer. It makes it more interesting for you as the viewer, because you see something going on inside that person's body and inside their mind. And I always felt that it did make you more poetic in the way that you moved, or more expressive. Even if you were expressing anger, having real anger inside you, which is dangerous, of course, is but finding, because we're all angry about things, is finding that in a way of going, of really making that happen, instead of just extending the arm, is a way of, makes dance into something other than just an expressive way of movement. It makes it a form of communication. Bang! I hope that hit you. And not because I'm trying to hurt you, because I'm doing something, but because that is, that's the other side of it, is that we as performers are obviously trying to communicate outwards for it. We hope that there's someone on the other end of the line, that's receiving it. And that's why Mary called her dance company the Mary Anthony Dance Theater. It's because it was about communication and about saying something to other people through the movement that you were saying. She always, talked about, when she was working through the movement, for something is, saying someone's speeches in her head, so that it would get her into the feeling of the way the body moved. For me, it was never that of, as much as, even though that would inform the movement, of just looking inside it and feeling the shapes, feeling the thing that was flowing out from something, so that you could look at a painting by Botticelli, because that's one of my favorites, and to see, the things, the poetry that it's expressing, with making you see the way the world is put together. So that, that was something that was implicit in all of the classes and all of the things that Mary taught, and could not be isolated to one particular exercise or one particular movement. It was something that was inherent in the teaching, is sense each other as we're beginning to say hello to your partner, as you're beginning to move across the floor. Say hello to the people that you're dancing with as you're moving. Find the opportunities to communicate to each other. Find the opportunities to look out towards the audience and to communicate whatever it is that you're feeling. And you find that people could go in all sorts of different directions from having studied with Mary Anthony and not just into performance. She made us into artists as well as dancers.